The void of space stretched silent and endless, but the silence was an illusion. Hidden inside that black ocean, an armada waited. Thousands of warships, different designs, different races, yet all gathered for one purpose, hung in the darkness, like a steel constellation. Their shields glowed faintly, a net of light shimmering across the fleet. Their cannons bristled with energy, eager to fire. They had crushed many worlds already, and now they came to take another. On the bridge of the lead dreadnought, everything was calm. The air vibrated softly with the hum of power cores, consoles flashing with steady rhythms. Officers moved with practiced discipline, their faces hard, their voices clipped. The admiral, a tall figure with scarred mandibles and iron posture, stood like a statue in front of the main display. To him, this battle was already decided. The planet below was weak and the defenders were broken. Nothing stood between his fleet and victory. And then the sensor alarms chimed. It was not a loud sound, not a blaring siren, just a single sharp note, a warning ping. Yet it cut through the bridge like a blade. Officers froze in place, turning to the console where the sound had come from. The young sensor technician leaned forward, staring at the numbers streaming across her screen. Her hands shook. Her throat clicked as she tried to speak. "Admiral," her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "We are detecting something." The admiral turned slowly. His eyes narrowed. "Speak clearly, officer. What is it?" The silence stretched. The technician swallowed. Then she said the words no one wanted to hear. "A human warship. Entering the system." The bridge went completely still. It was as if the life had been drained from the room. Every officer, every soldier, even the admiral himself, froze. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound was the steady hum of the ship's engines carrying on as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The admiral's mandibles twitched. He straightened his back, forcing his voice to remain calm. "One ship. Just one. And this is what causes silence?" But his words felt hollow, even to himself. The crew had heard the stories. Everyone in the galaxy had. The tales of humanity were whispered in military academies, in command rooms, even in the back alleys of neutral worlds. Stories of battles that should have been impossible, empires that had stood for centuries, shattered by a handful of human ships. Armies broken by soldiers who refused to surrender. Stations turned to graveyards in a single night. Humans did not need fleets to win wars. They did not need numbers. One ship was enough. The technician's hands trembled on the console. She dared not look up. The weapons officer shifted uncomfortably, his claws clicking against metal. Even the communication crew, who normally filled the bridge with chatter, stared at the floor, afraid of their own voices. The admiral growled low, trying to crush the fear before it spread. "You are all soldiers. Remember who we are. We are the strongest fleet ever assembled. Thousands of warships. We do not bend before myths." Yet when he looked into their eyes, he saw it. The fear, deep and unshakable, because it was not myth. It was memory. Every race here, every species that made up this great armada had once crossed paths with humans, and none of them had forgotten. The Orcs remembered the burning of their colonies when a single human frigate had outmaneuvered an entire fleet and left their skies in flames. The Zathari carried stories of the night they came, when humans boarded stations in silence, their blades cutting deeper than any plasma rifle. The proud Kresh still bore scars across their capital. From the last war they thought they could win against Earth's soldiers. The admiral's claws tightened behind his back. He forced his voice to remain cold. "It is one ship," he repeated. "Only one. And we are thousands." But even as he said it, a whisper ran through the crew. A whisper none dared to speak aloud, but one they all felt. One human ship was enough. The words echoed through the dreadnought's bridge like a curse. A human warship. No one repeated them. but everyone had heard. The weight of that sentence pressed down on every officer, every crew member, until even breathing felt heavy. For long seconds, silence ruled the room. The hum of the ship's power core seemed louder than ever. At last, one of the communication officers broke the silence, his voice trembling. Are we certain, Admiral? Could it be an error? Some trick of the scanners? The sensor technician shook her head quickly, almost violently, as if afraid to be accused of lying. No, sir. The signal is clear. The profile matches perfectly. Hull design, engine signature, weapon ports, there's no mistake. A low murmur spread across the bridge. Not words, just the sound of fear, of soldiers who knew too much of the past. The Admiral raised a hand sharply. Quiet. His tone was firm, but inside, even he felt the old weight crawling back into his chest. Memories he had tried to bury returned. Stories told in hushed voices during training, warnings given to every cadet, scars etched into the history of their people. Do you all forget what we are? He growled, trying to keep control. We are the Armada, 10 races united, thousands of ships. A single human vessel cannot stop us. But his words did little to calm them. His officers exchanged glances, their eyes wide, their hands twitching, at their stations. It was as if his speech had no strength against the name of their enemy, because it wasn't just fear. It was memory. The Orcs' first officer shifted uneasily, his scaled hands tightening around the rail. He could still recall his grandmother's voice, whispering tales of the fire ship, a lone human frigate that had appeared in Orc space generations ago. It fought with impossible cunning, striking from shadows vanishing into void, leaving a trail of burned colonies. Entire fleets had chased it, yet not one returned. The Orcs had never caught that ship, and they never forgot. On the other side of the bridge, a Zathari navigator lowered his head, his long tendrils curling in shame. His people told of the silent boarding. A single human corvette had infiltrated a heavily guarded station. No alarms sounded, no distress signals escaped. Only silence. Days later, when the Zathari reinforcements arrived, the station was nothing but floating wreckage. Not a single survivor. To this day, no one knew how the humans had done it. And the Kresh weapons officer, the one with claws that never shook, now gripped the console so tightly his talons scraped grooves in the metal. He had never spoken of it aloud, but his own father had fought in the War of Ashes. The Kresh had been proud then, confident, thinking their empire untouchable. Yet human soldiers had landed on their capital world. They fought street by street, house by house, until the skies themselves turned black with smoke. The Kresh won, but only just, and victory had tasted like ashes. Now those stories weren't just old warnings. They were alive again, breathing in the minds of every crew member. The name human alone was enough to shatter discipline. A junior officer whispered without meaning to, his voice barely a thread of sound. One ship is enough. Others heard him. None corrected him. None dared. The Admiral spun toward them, fury burning in his chest. He wanted to shout, to roar that they were cowards, that legends could not harm them. But the fire in his voice died before it reached his tongue, because deep down he knew the truth too. It wasn't myth. It wasn't fear born from nothing. It was history. The humans had earned it. Still, he refused to show weakness. He slammed his claw against the command rail. Listen well. If we allow fear to rule us, then we have already lost. This ship, this single ship, will not break us. But even as he spoke, a cold thought crept into his mind. The humans had chosen to appear. Out of all places, all systems, all battles, they had chosen this one, and humans never appeared without reason. The Admiral looked at his officers, their eyes wide with quiet terror, their movements stiff, their voices gone. His words had not erased the fear. They had only painted over it with a thin coat of denial. Whispers still ran beneath the silence, though no lips moved. The whispers of memory, the whispers of terror. One ship, one human warship. And for the first time, the armada did not feel like an army. It felt like prey. Fear had no need for words. It spread in silence, creeping from one officer to another, sinking into every shadow of the bridge. The admiral stood tall, pretending to be unshaken, but he could feel it too. The air was heavier. The silence was thicker. Every heartbeat seemed louder than it should. No one wanted to admit it. But they were all remembering. Humans were not like other species. They did not build vast empires with endless fleets. They did not rely on wealth or on superior numbers. Humans carried something else, something no sensor could detect, no computer could calculate. They carried a reputation that weighed heavier than any planet. The Orcs remembered first. One of their commanders stood rigid near the side of the bridge, his scaled hands gripping the rail. His ancestors had faced humans centuries ago. His people had been proud then, thinking their fleets were unstoppable. The Orcs Navy had hunted a lone human frigate through their space. It was supposed to be an easy kill, but the humans had not fought like others. They did not fight to win one battle. They fought to make every battle a scar. That frigate slipped past entire squadrons, striking supply lines, burning colonies, then vanishing before anyone could catch it. The Orcs deployed hundreds of ships, and still they failed. In the end, their fleets limped home in shame, while their citizens looked to the skies in fear. That one human ship became a ghost story, told from parent to child. The commander's grandmother had whispered it to him when he was small. If you see a human ship, run. If you can't run, pray. Now those words returned, unbidden. On the other side of the bridge, the Zathari navigator closed his eyes. His tendrils twitched with nervous energy. He could almost hear the voices of his elders, retelling the story of the silent boarding. It had happened on a great station, heavily armed, guarded by fleets, defended with the pride of the Zathari. Yet in one night, a human corvette slipped past them all. No alarms, no warnings, no distress call escaped. When reinforcements arrived, the station floated as a dead husk, its people gone, its halls filled with silence. To this day, no one knew how the humans had done it. The navigator had grown up with that story, told like a nightmare meant to scare children into obedience. He had laughed at it once. But now, with the human warship out there in the dark, it did not feel like a story anymore. It felt like a memory coming back to life. The Kresh weapons officer stared at his console, his claws trembling. His people were warriors, proud and fierce, unbroken by centuries of war. But even they had scars from humanity. His father had fought in the War of Ashes. The Kresh believed they could crush Earth, as they had crushed so many others. They were wrong. Human soldiers had landed on their capital world, fighting with a savagery that machines could not predict and that logic could not explain. They fought street by street, building by building, until the sky itself turned black with fire. The war ended, but the Kresh never forgot. Even victory had not felt like victory. His father's voice still haunted him. Son, they fight as if every battle is their last. That is why they win. Now sitting on this dreadnought, the officer could feel those words tightening around his heart. The admiral looked across the bridge. He saw it in all of them. The memories were no longer buried. They lived again, breathing heavy as iron. Every race in this armada had tasted human defiance before. Every race had scars, and together those scars made something greater, something that no weapon could erase. Reputation. The admiral clenched his jaw. He tried to push back against it, tried to remind himself that this was only one ship against thousands. Logic said they should not fear. Numbers said they could not lose. But fear is not ruled by logic, and memory does not listen to numbers. The weight of the past was already pressing down on them all, and in that heavy silence, one truth became clear to every soul on that bridge. A human warship was never just a ship. It was every battle, every scar, every nightmare reborn. The weight of memory was already winning. The admiral's claws tapped against the command rail, each click echoing like a hammer in the silent bridge. His eyes stayed locked on the central display where the human warship now appeared. At first, it was only a small dot against the stars, but as the sensors updated, its outline grew clear. It was not large compared to their dreadnoughts. It did not glow with the blinding shields of their own vessels, nor did it bristle with endless cannons like the Armada's battleships. On the screen, it almost looked plain, just steel, black against black, a shadow drifting in the void. Yet the bridge crew stared at it as though they were looking at a monster. The communication officer swallowed hard. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Admiral, the ship is not hiding. It is broadcasting its presence, openly. They want us to know they are here." The words chilled the room. Everyone understood what that meant. Humans did not bluff. They did not play games. If they revealed themselves, it was because they had already decided the outcome. The Admiral straightened, refusing to let the silence crush him. "Arm all weapons," he ordered. His voice was iron, but deep down he felt a splinter of doubt. The crew obeyed, their movements stiff, mechanical. Across the fleet, thousands of guns came online, their targeting systems focusing on the lone vessel. The dreadnought's cannons began to glow with energy, ready to unleash fire that could tear a moon apart. Still, the human ship drifted calmly, as though surrounded by nothing at all. Then, a new sound filled the bridge, a steady tone, followed by a transmission that reached across every ship in the Armada. No encryption, no code, just a single message spoken in the harsh but clear voice of a human commander. "We see you." That was all. No threats, no demands. Just those 3 words. Yet they landed like thunder. On the bridge, the crew stiffened. The weapons officers, claws twitched against his console. The navigator's tendrils curled tightly around his seat. The sensor technician bit her lip until it bled. Even the Admiral felt his chest tighten. "They see us." It was not just a statement. It was a promise. Humans did not waste words. If they said, "We see you," it meant they had already marked every weakness, every blind spot, every crack in the Armada's wall. It meant the battle had already begun, even before the first shot. The Admiral tried to push back the wave of fear. He slammed his fist against the rail. "Do not let words shake you. Fire on my command. One ship cannot stand against thousands." But no one moved to confirm. No one shouted back the usual discipline. Even the crew that had once obeyed instantly now hesitated. Their fingers hovered over controls, their voices caught in their throats. Because they all knew the truth. When humans spoke, history followed. In the silence, one junior officer whispered, not loud enough for the Admiral to hear, "They want us to shoot first." And he was right. Humans were predators. They let fear eat at the enemy until the first mistake was made. The moment the Armada fired, the humans would strike back. No one knew how. No one knew when. But everyone knew the result. It would not be clean. It would not be simple. It would be fire, blood, and scars that would echo for generations. The dreadnought's weapons hummed, fully charged. Every ship in the Armada had their cannons locked on the lone human vessel. One order, 1 second, and the void would explode in blinding light. But the Admiral's voice caught in his throat. He could not give the command. The human ship floated, there silent and fearless as if daring them, and in that moment the Admiral realized something dreadful. This was not just war. This was a battle of will, and the Armada's will was breaking. The silence deepened. The human ship waited. The fleet trembled. No shot was fired, but already the middle conflict had begun, not in weapons, but in hearts. The Admiral stood like stone at the center of the bridge, but inside he felt the storm building. The human ship hung in the dark, calm, almost arrogant, as though the thousands of warships around it did not matter. Its silence was worse than weapons. Its stillness was louder than cannon fire. Across the Armada, tension spread like cracks in glass. First came hesitation. Captains who once barked orders with pride now spoke more slowly, their voices tight with doubt. Officers who normally followed instantly paused to ask again, their eyes flicking toward the black dot on their screens. Crew members shifted in their seats, hands trembling just above their controls. The fear was not shouted, not spoken. It did not need to be. Everyone felt it. On the dreadnought, the communication channels began to flood. Dozens of voices from other ships demanded answers all at once. Admiral, should we reposition? Admiral, this is madness. We should withdraw until reinforcements arrive. Our engines are vulnerable. That ship will target us first, I know it. The Admiral silenced the channel with a roar, but the damage was already done. The fleet's unity was unraveling. He gripped the rail so hard his claws dug grooves into the metal. Listen to me, he thundered. This is a single human ship. It cannot harm us all. We are thousands, and they are one. But even as he shouted, he saw doubt in his officers' eyes. His words were numbers. Their fear was memory. Numbers could be argued. Memory could not. The first ship broke away. It was small, a scout frigate near the rear of the formation. Without warning, its engines flared bright, and it turned sharply from the line. No permission, no orders. It simply fled into the black. On the bridge, alarms rang as the dreadnought systems detected the breach in formation. Officers turned toward the Admiral, expecting him to command pursuit, but he said nothing. He only stared at the screen, because the moment that frigate ran, 10 more followed. One by one, like cracks spreading in a wall, ships across the fleet began to peel away. Some jumped immediately into hyperspace. Others simply drifted farther, and farther from the battle line, their captains pretending to reposition but really just trying to escape the human ship's gaze. The Admiral's mandibles clenched. His voice shook with fury. Cowards, return to your posts. No one answered. On the dreadnought, the crew could feel it too, the collapse. It was no longer an army. It was a collection of frightened captains, each thinking of their own survival, the weapons officer whispered, his claws digging into his console. If we stay, we die. The navigator trembled, his tendrils curling tighter. They are waiting for us to fire. If we fire, everything ends. The sensor technician's lips were pale. She stared at the screen as if hypnotized by the human ship. Why aren't they shooting? Why don't they move? That was the worst part. The silence, the waiting. The humans did nothing, and that nothing was killing the Armada faster than any weapon could. The Admiral forced himself to stand taller, though his legs felt heavy as stone. His voice tried to cut through the fear. We are warriors. We are the greatest fleet this galaxy has ever known. Do not shame your ancestors. Do not let ghosts defeat you. But the words rang hollow. He could hear it himself. Ghosts had defeated them. Ghosts of memory. Ghosts of battles long past. Another squadron broke away. Then another. The grand formation shattered further with every passing minute. It was not a retreat commanded. It was a retreat born of panic. The Admiral slammed his claw down, his voice raw with desperation. Stand your ground. Fight them. One ship cannot. But his words were drowned out by another message. The human ship spoke again. Calm. Cold. Clear. You cannot hide. That was all. And it was enough. Ships began jumping wildly into hyperspace, fleeing in every direction. Discipline was gone. Unity was gone. The Armada was no longer an unstoppable storm. It was a broken mirror. Shards, scattering into the void. On the bridge of the dreadnought, the Admiral felt his chest sink. His officers no longer looked at him. Their eyes were locked on the human ship. And for the first time in his long career, he realized his command was meaningless. The cracks had become collapse. The Armada was falling apart. The fleet that once glowed like a wall of stars was breaking apart. Ships fled in all directions, their engines leaving desperate trails of light before vanishing into hyperspace. Others powered down their cores, trying to hide in the void like frightened prey. And still the human warship did not fire. It only floated, silent and steady, as though it owned the stars themselves. On the dreadnought's bridge, the admiral's claws dug into the command rail until the metal bent beneath his strength. His eyes burned with fury and shame. "This is madness," he roared. "Return to your lines, fight. You are soldiers, not animals." But no one listened. His words were carried into the empty channels, answered only by static and the sound of captains abandoning their posts. The admiral turned toward his crew. But even here, discipline had died. His officers no longer saluted him, no longer waited for orders. Their eyes were hollow, fixed on the single black shadow of the human ship. The navigator whispered, his tendrils trembling. "They don't even need to fight. We're already lost." The human vessel drifted forward slowly, not rushing, not striking. It did not need to. Across the fleet, panic spread like wildfire. A destroyer near the front line tried to turn away too fast, colliding with another ship. Their shields sparked in a storm of light. Alarms screamed, and both vessels spun helplessly before vanishing into hyperspace, fleeing in disgrace. A squadron of carriers released all their fighter craft in blind desperation. Hundreds of small ships swarmed out, engines burning hot, weapons ready. But the human ship didn't even move. It didn't raise shields. It didn't target them. And that was worse. The fighters circled once, twice, then broke apart, their pilots unable to bring themselves to fire. Within minutes, they scattered into the dark, leaving their carriers defenseless. The Armada wasn't fighting an enemy. It was fighting itself. The admiral slammed his claw against the console, his voice cracking with rage. "Stand and fight. Fire, curse you." But the weapons officer did not move. His claws hovered above the trigger, shaking violently. His eyes glistened. "If we fire, Admiral, they'll answer. And when they answer, none of us will survive." The Admiral's mandibles locked tight. For a heartbeat, he wanted to kill his own officer for such cowardice. But then he saw the truth in his eyes. The truth he himself had tried to bury. This was not cowardice. This was survival, and it was already too late. One by one, the fleet's proud ships winked out of existence as they leapt into hyperspace, abandoning the battle that had never truly begun. The massive wall of light that once shone with unity now flickered like dying embers until only a handful of vessels remained. The dreadnought's bridge fell into heavy silence. The admiral could hear his own heart pounding, feel the despair pressing down on him. His armada was gone, not defeated in glorious battle, not destroyed by overwhelming firepower, but broken by fear. The human ship had done nothing, and yet it had destroyed them all. The admiral lowered his head slowly, his breath heavy. His people had built this fleet to show strength, to prove dominance, to remind the galaxy of their power. Now that same galaxy would laugh at their shame. He looked once more at the black warship on the screen. It moved with no urgency, no rush, drifting calmly among the wreckage of discipline and pride. And in that moment, he understood the truth. Humans did not fight with numbers. They fought with shadows, with silence, with memory. Their greatest weapon was not their guns or their ships. It was the fear they carried in the hearts of others. The admiral's claws loosened on the rail. His voice fell to a whisper, too soft for his crew to hear. We were never their enemy. We were only their story. He closed his eyes, the weight of failure pressing down on him like the void itself. And as another wave of ships fled into hyperspace, leaving him alone against the human shadow, the admiral realized something dreadful. The collapse was complete. The armada no longer existed. It had destroyed itself. The battlefield was no battlefield at all. The armada had scattered like dust in the wind, its proud formation broken into fleeing fragments. Where once thousands of ships had shone like a wall of stars, now only silence remained. And in that silence, the human warship drifted. It did not chase. It did not fire. It did not need to. Its very presence had been the weapon, and the armada had fallen to pieces without a single shot exchanged. On the bridge of the dreadnought, the admiral stood frozen, staring at the black shadow of steel on the screen. His claws hung limp at his sides, no longer gripping the command rail. His voice, once filled with fire and pride, was gone. What words could he speak now? None. His crew sat in silence as well, each one broken in their own way. The weapons officer had turned off his console, unable to face the choice he had refused to make. The navigator's tendrils hung loose, trembling with exhaustion. The sensor technician still stared at her screen, pale and hollow-eyed, as if she were staring not at a ship, but at her own nightmares given form. No one spoke. No one dared. At last, the admiral whispered to himself, though the entire bridge could hear. One ship, one human ship, and the greatest fleet in the galaxy is gone. His words sank into the silence like stones into water. He raised his eyes to the screen again, and for the first time, he saw clearly. That vessel was not a simple warship. It was a storm. It carried with it the weight of centuries, the memory of wars that had scarred entire civilizations. It carried the shadows of soldiers who never surrendered, who never gave up, even when all logic said they should. The admiral understood then. Humans did not win battles by strength alone. They won them by breaking the enemy before the fight even began. The human ship moved slowly, almost lazily, past the wreckage of the formation. Its engines glowed faintly, pushing it forward with the calmness of a predator that already owned its prey. It did not salute. It did not gloat. It simply passed, silent and unstoppable, as though this moment was too small to even notice. And that was the deepest wound of all. The admiral's fleet had not been worth fighting. All across the galaxy, messages would spread. Captains who fled would tell their governments. Officers would whisper in shame to their families. Rumors would grow, becoming legends, and legends would become warnings. Entire civilizations would remember this day, the day when the Grand Armada, strongest in the galaxy, collapsed into panic because one human ship appeared. The galaxy would whisper it in bars, in military halls, in the shadows of marketplaces. It would be taught in academies as both shame and warning, and the whispers would carry the same words again and again. Fear the humans. On the dreadnought, the admiral lowered his head. He had lived long enough to know that history was cruel. This moment would not be remembered as a battle. It would not even be remembered as a defeat. It would be remembered as a collapse. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly, the sound heavy with both grief and acceptance. We were not their enemies, he said softly. We were only the proof of their legend. Around him, his officers sat in silence, unable to answer. The admiral opened his eyes once more, forcing himself to look at the black warship drifting away into the stars. It was already turning, engines glowing brighter as it prepared to leave. No farewell, no threat, no acknowledgement at all. It did not need to. Its message was already carved into the galaxy's heart. As the human ship vanished into hyperspace, the admiral felt the weight of its presence linger, heavier than any chain. He knew his people would never forget this day. None of them would. The collapse would echo for centuries, and in that echo, one truth would remain unbroken, unchallenged, and eternal. Where humans walk, empires tremble.